closer, you can come up, or I can, pass stuff around. So you can kind of see the different, it's very subtle, but there's a difference here.
So like on the grouping of cows that you have in the library, it's almost, like less than 1/8 of an inch, like the width of this little pencil that just gives it that soft corner, right?
Yeah.
Which, like if you guys are in ceramics, I've said it a couple times, but the same kind of thing would probably be a good idea on the bottom of all your pieces, whether that's drum or, those larger coils, because those sharp edges are going to feel sharp and they're going to chip.
Yep.
So it's going to look good and it's going to function.
Yeah, when you pick it up, it'll feel good. Pick it up, just a little cake. So the beveled edge will give you that little angle, if you want that, and you could do a sharp one, like a heavy one, if you want a big bevel, or just a finger bevel, just on that edge, depending on how wet your clay is. This is still really wet, so it's giving me a nice smooth edge. But so it's something to think about. I mean, it's kind of similar to throwing. You want you want the rim to be like nice to your mouth when you go to take a drink. So, it's kind of the same idea. This is kind of the rim of the tile. So, just being just caressing it, I guess. Sounds silly, but.
So I've got my coils done. There's connection areas where these coils have come together where I put the next coil on. I have found those problematic. I like to take a little wecco of clay, do a slight little coil and push it down in there. You guys notice I'm not really scoring anything. I'm just kind of putting it on there. I do, however, squish and pull it. And I put it on there. I don't try to get it nice and flat and put it on like a sticker because I'll get a little bubble on there. I just put a wad and then I spread it out. That will connect and kind of close that section out. The last coil that I went around, I left a little thick because I'm going to take this after I get it centered and thrown. I'm going to start to stretch it out. That rim needs to be relatively thick. If you stretch the pot out, it gets thinner and thinner and thinner. We've got to have it the same thickness throughout, and it's got to be able to go that far out, almost at a 45-degree angle. So if you're going to do this style, you're going to develop your own kind of method, but just listen to me now, but hear me later when you're making, you'll realize like, oh yeah, I do need to leave that a little thick. If you notice, I'll spin it, it's got some wiggle to it, right? There's some thick and some thin areas. When you go to throw, I'm using ribs because this is a large piece, and as we work wider, if I'm doing my little tiny fingers or my little tiny knuckles to throw, I can't get enough pressure to pull the piece up. So if I have those ribs, it just makes larger fingers for me to be able to work the piece up so I can affect more of a space. You're going to be moving and turning this slower than you are throwing it. So you've got to realize in the center, it's turning really, really slow. Like if you're throwing something really thin. The wider it gets, the faster that's kind of spinning. But the more surface area that you are going to be affecting. So you've got to move up your pot at a slow rate. Does anybody, when you start throwing, if you went too fast, you get this nice cool spiral that goes up the form, but you can't get really a good flat form, and it starts to throw you off, and you get this rim that does this. So you've got to develop that speed and that dance of how you use this piece. Okay, so I've got this kind of situated. I will go in and kind of screed, if you will, but I use my finger, connect these coils together. When you are doing coils, I saw you doing some coil pots. I didn't see what you were doing, I just saw you doing coils. You don't ever want to affect the piece by going straight up and down. It'll be like going down a dirt washboard road. It'll just get worse and worse and worse. You want to go at an angle to the piece. When I was coiling, I was going clockwise. When I throw, I go counterclockwise. Okay? When I coiled, I did this. I'm going to do the same method of putting these coils together as I go. And I'm going to start spreading this out. If you guys want to stand up and come over here and look at what I'm doing, I'm going to get the inside of this a little more smooth and get the outside a little more smooth. So you're welcome to stand up and check it out.
Do you stagger your seams? So you're not
What do you mean stagger?
When you,
Oh, as it gets going, there'll be more of a stagger. Right now, they're kind of one note.
right. Okay. Have you had problems with that yet?
I have not,
That's good. Okay.
because I think of the way that I'm moving this and working it. If you notice, I'm not removing any clay as I'm smearing this stuff together. I don't want the clay to disappear. The more clay you remove, the thinner it becomes. So I'm connecting that bottom and kind of making it smooth. I'm really doing it very lightly. And I was going down at this direction. Now I'm going to start smearing this part together. If you notice, I am not removing clay. I am just pulling it, and I'm going at an angle. Do you see that angle in there? And I'm not doing the whole piece. I'm going to do a little bit here, and then I slowly start rising up. This hand is always constant holding. If you don't hold it, you'll get some jibber jabber and some stretching that goes on the piece. So I affect the inside. It's still all ratchet in there. I'm fine with that. And then I'll take my rib and affect the outside. So, I try to work with clean hands, and I want them kind of dry, and I just lost that dang old rib. Where'd you go? There you are. I'll close this up so we don't let that dry out too much. Get the rib kind of dry. I use this round edge, and I'm just going to slowly pull those ribs out. Not the ribs, but the little coils. Again, I'm holding my hand on the inside of the pot, so I'm not stretching it too much. I am not worried about getting these things perfect, because I'm going to turn this and I'm going to throw it. So as long as I get them kind of situated and kind of sealed up, we're good. Do you see how wet the clay is? You need to have it that wet so you can affect it. The problem is you can't stretch it out very much because it's so wet. It's going to want to flop down on you.
It also
That's why I have the weed burner.
also helps with your connections and your no scoring.
Yeah. The process of the trigger and the pull on this, you don't have to worry about air bubbles. And that scoring, you're smearing it together, right? So it's there. There's going to be air bubbles. When I'm pulling this up with my ribs, you're going to hear, it'll sound like bacon kind of as I'm going up. But because of that spiral that goes up, and because of the smear that goes on here, and because of the compression that I will be doing with the two ribs as I'm throwing, it'll make it solid and kind of sealed up. All right, clean hands again. We'll get this belt back on.
Y'all been playing with slip because y'all been doing tornado and stuff. So right now I'm just putting scratch coats down, and then I'm gonna do a flood coat. I don't know if y'all done any flood coat type stuff. No. Getting like a puffy coat of slip on there. So right now, doing scratch coat, get a nice scratch coat down, as kind of just the base. And this is a lot of what we did at Aloe Tile. This is the main style of slip painting. Because everything that we did at Aloe was colored slips. So we had a whole rainbow of colored slips.
They were in and out. There was an Aloe Tile employee just here a second ago.
So what I do is I get, and I'm using the A-stripe slip. I don't know what white slip y'all have here. I'm using the opposite, whatever.
Jeff A-stripe.
Yeah.
You can find it online.
And this creates a good base for the colored glazes that I'm using later. If I put the colored glazes straight on the red clay, it's beautiful too. It's just very different. It's such a strong difference between. So sometimes I'll put the glazes on the bottom of things without any slip, and it's just totally different. You can see the red clay through it. But this gives me a good, like, kind of white palette. Very different from what he
Gesso.
is into. Yeah, but it makes the colors really bright and happy. So as far as blood coating goes, I don't know if you can see, but I get a whole bunch of slip on my brush, and it's fairly watery, it's not stiff. I want it to move, and this is probably still not going to move as much as I want it to. But I get a whole, just would really need to like really get it watery, but it'll move. So I get a lot on there, and I kind of puddle it on. So I do like a nice puddle. It'll be a little bit messy, but to get a good little puddle going, I don't know if y'all can tell, like the little pillowy, and then you can kind of move it, pick it up, and kind of like shake it around, and it'll move and kind of flatten out. And then it gives you just this puffy, like, pillowy texture, which could be really fun. So that's what I'm gonna do here. I may not do it in the background. I may just do just kind of a flat brush coat on the background since it's in the back. And the hamburger I'm gonna do with the squeeze bottle, but same technique as the blood coating. So let it move down the line and then tap it. Do that. That'll kind of flatten it out. It'll also get air bubbles out. You'll probably still end up with a little bit of air bubbles, and you can kind of just go in later and like put a little drop of slip in there if you want, if that bothers you. The air bubbles, unless they're big, they don't really bother me. I don't mind if there's little. It's just to me.
So I use a rag instead of flooding this with a sponge of water. We want to keep this dry. As it gets bigger, I'm going to have the bottom that's going to be drier than the top as I'm putting the coils on. I don't want that water to drip down into a section and seep in and cause a crack, because clay is like a sponge. It's going to absorb the water. The reason I was kind of getting you like, why isn't it flooding very well? It's because her tile is a little drier than she usually uses it, and it soaks up that water, and that slip won't move like she's used to. So I use a rag. This is a rally towel from the Hooks, Corpus Christi Hooks. I've had a bowling towel from when I was a kid that I used. It allows me to pinpoint where I'm going to put my water. I can do this and not get water, not have a splash pan, and not get it all over myself, although I will be a filthy, dirty monkey by the end of this situation. But I can really pinpoint where I'm putting the water. If you guys notice, it's spinning relatively slow, and it's not on center. The rim's not on center, the walls aren't on center. All I'm doing is just getting this prepared, and then I'm going to force it to go on center. Do you see how my hand's raising up and going down? That's fine. I'm going to cut that off. It's going to get on center. So right now I'm concentrating on compressing the rim and pushing down, basically telling it that you are about to go on center. This is where I want you to go. And I'm getting that clay nice and wet. The top is what's going to stretch the most. And if it's dry and you let it dry out, it's going to crack as you open it. That crack will continue on if you keep stretching it. So I'm constantly going back to my rim between every pull and getting it nice and moist again and telling it like, it's okay, I know I asked you a lot to stretch. Let's just get back together. You can deal with it, that kind of thing. When I do get water in the bottom, I'll take my large sponge and I'll wipe it out just a little bit. I do want the bottom to have some moisture into it because I'm about to start getting this thing on center. My first move with my flat rib and my plastic rib, wooden on the outside, plastic on the inside, is just to get this to kind of compress together and rise up and get it nice and straight. I don't want to stretch it yet. I'm just telling it like she was telling her pieces what to do. So I'm going to go in. It's very important that you don't squeeze too much. It's very important that you don't go straight in like this. You want that clay to slide across your ribs as you're working it. And it's very important that you do all of this stuff in baby steps. The more steps you do, the longer it's going to take, and it's not very efficient, but you're learning. And I'm still learning. I've only done 50 of these. My buddy Daniel probably just hit 1,000 big pots. So I'm just going to go in and just kind of get this a little straight. It's still going to be wonky. I'll get it wet again, get it a little straighter. I'll get it wet again probably 3 times, and it'll raise up about this much. And then I'll start leaning it out and stretching it. Elbows into your ribs. That keeps you stable. I'll also put an elbow down on my thigh in this stage. As I get up, I won't be able to do that. So, going in, just kind of holding. I will leave this rib at the base in my right hand and raise the inside rib up almost to the top, and then I'll start raising that up. I'm not putting a ton of pressure. My concentration is keeping my arms from doing this or this. Just kind of holding it and coming up. You see how I got a little more on center? Okay, I'm going to do it again. And then it's just following that trail up the mountain for the rest of the pot, except for drying it out. So I don't really have much to say. You can just keep talking, and I'm just going to keep straightening this out.
Do you know how to stitch?
Sir?
You know how to stitch?
Stitch? What do you mean stitch?
I'll show you. There's a different way to do this that you might like. It'll cut a lot of time out of it. It's super strong. Stitching is the method. So you use larger coil, and you can also use slab. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And the way you fuse it, basically hook and play from one section into
Over
the other,
and over.
chasing it back again.
Right.
Basically, you run a weld.
Yeah.
Right? It's a really strong way. So quick.
And do you still throw after that?
Yeah. I was teaching. I had a student who really wanted to make big pots. Right. I was showing him. It's Balstari. There's a video of him putting up a huge cylinder, right? And the impetus of it is the slab, right? It's stitched together.
Joseph Sand, who is one of Mark Hewitt's apprentices, does a lot of slab work on his larger forms. Hi, Mama. You found it. She's responsible for this.
You gotta blame somebody.
So while he was doing his thing, I also did stamped that. I did the ceramic postcard, so I made a little postcard stamp, kind of supposed to be like the old postcard, kind of a nouveau kind of feel to it. So if y'all made stamps yet? Yeah? So like put the reverse and then you can this it and stamp, you guys can do it. That's what I did for this, and then also my initials. So sometimes I just kind of, sometimes I stamp them, sometimes I
Is the
write
inside
it,
ribbon
but
not smooth?
he had
Sure.
to
Is the inside ribbon not smooth?
Yeah, you can touch it.
So I don't particularly.
And each time I stretch this out,
Because the little
I'm
lids
only
that
going
they
just a
use,
little
they don't.
bit further out each time.
Then
And
tomorrow,
you see how slow I'm working up the mountain?
So I like to, the thing is I run like a needle in the hospital. Like tap it, get those bubbles to go up to the bottom of the bottle. Because you'll have little blowouts in the bottle. So I'm just gonna do kind of the same technique as the blood coat with the brush that I did. But just with the bottle.
You know what I will need a favor on? In order for you guys to be able to disc
so is that the same white slip?
It is, yeah.
Okay. And then.
I'm gonna need to know the dimensions of your kiln,
Flow and
like
not
height
plug.
and width.
Height,
Those are your recommendations.
So,
If your mom doesn't work here and she's not gonna take care of it.
yeah, so it's pretty much the same consistency that I'm using to paint it on. So I'll just pour it in there.
sure you're doing
And I
it
was telling some of y'all, I like to fishing line works really well. Right now I have wires, so couldn't find my fishing line. So pretty tall, like I like it to go higher.
So then in between, do you put them like in water to soak?
I just keep it. I keep it in there, but I'm using it a lot. So if you're gonna use it for like just a little while, like I do that with glazes. Sometimes I'll use a bottle to put glaze on, and I will like I'll pour it back into the container and then immediately rinse it out, so it doesn't get all clogged up in there. This stuff, yeah, and they're not the cheapest things in the world, so I can't just.
Okay, and that's why we're not gonna have any studio ones.
We'll have some ketchup bottles we can try, and we've got fabric paint that make great, I think, polygraph stands. So, I mean, that really interests me. And I know we're gonna have some people say,
Wanting to do it, well then,
Anything. I don't do a lot of this stuff. Maybe with the underlays a little bit, but mostly I'm doing the puppy painting. I really like the texture it gives, and I think it gives a little bit of life to the tile instead of it being like super flat. But I did notice that y'all are doing a lot of textures and stuff on your tiles. Are y'all using stamps, pressing stuff into it, or how are y'all getting on those textures?
we're basically doing Sgraffito and then Sgraffito Plus, so it's kind of guided experimentation, and we are pouring a press mold, so the opportunity for little springy thingamajigs. But I mean, this is one of my feels good and gets you in that happy place, or the epiphany of a lightning bolt. It's not really like a lightning bolt. There's just so many